talking to me.
Yeah, so this is what I've built for it. You were talking about it plugging in?
Yeah.
There's the start power, it'll plug in.
Right.
There's your fuse box under the bonnet, that'll plug in.
Yeah, from V6 to the V8 version.
So what I modified is I modified the start relay, because he'd already stuffed with the start relay, and he made the start relay a fan relay. So I put it back to being a start relay, and I've modified it to suit this loom. Because I had to modify in there anyway, so instead of putting it back to standard, I put it back to what it matches this. And then there's the fuel pump trigger in here, and there's a fan trigger in here, and I put a fan switch up in here, and if these are a bit too long, I'm just going to pull them back into here.
Oh,
So what factory, it was left hand front. I've actually
ECU was the left hand front.
where is my G? Oh, over here. Grab that GS loom. Grab this GS loom. Yeah. So since then, I've actually had this has come in, right? So here's what it looked like standard. So here's the same covers.
Yeah.
Same covers. And there's the ECU plug coming into the engine bay. And this is where people get it wrong with 3UZs, because they think that the looms are configured the same between all the UZs. But that's definitely in the engine bay. So it has a box in the engine bay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so that doesn't work for this, so I've split it off here. So where it comes up from the transmission, and from that side it all comes along, and I split it, and I run it to here, and that's, funnily enough, two of the plugs are the transmission and the right hand side of the engine. So they've actually done it really nicely. So I rebuild one plug to the ECU, which is the left hand side of the engine, because all that stuff goes to the pretty much one plug, one connector. They've done it really nicely. Get rid of this thing. The last bit I've got left to do is the airflow meter wiring, because I've got to sort the lengths of it, and this is the sort of stuff I saw through the whole thing. It's your joins, and what you do is
maybe I should become an Oro Sparky, because I could do that.
Yeah, so you cut here.
I could do that.
You cut there, you put a piece in the middle, and so you end up with two joins instead of popping pins and changing it.
And then multiple different.
Oh, those are all the same colour. They're all the same colour.
Okay. I mean, yes, you can make it work, but it's not how you do stuff.
No.
The factory shows you a methodology of how something should be done, and you more or less follow that.
Yeah. And so when I was working through, what I found in the front here, which ended up in here, was there was a whole lot of cut wires. Oh, a whole lot, probably 8. And I'm like, what are these extra wires? And they were things like the start inhibit. So you haven't seen it yet, you haven't seen the video, but he's fitted an extra start inhibit in the truck to the shifter.
But why? There's one on the gearbox.
Because he couldn't find it. So here's your factory start inhibit wires. They were cut off in the loom in here. And so none of that was working. I'll show you that other bit. So we also discussed that it didn't need the fuel computer because it's the wrong series. But in here, then relays soldered in.
Yeah, it's not even a box. Maybe, but like
it's not the worst. I've seen that sort of stuff, but you've got tapes and joints. All the joints are ugly.
Yeah, and look at how they is this a fuel controller that soldered to the pin?
Pushed in. Yeah.
Oh, is it pushed in?
Oh, I think they're probably terminals pushed in. They might be soldered in there. So what he had was the computer itself was powered off the right wire, but then the factory coils and injectors, those wires weren't used. So they were all connected into the computer power. The whole engine was run off the main power supply that normally just does the computer.
Yeah, but the vehicle had a separate power supply for the
they were already there because it was a V6.
Yeah, so
and you're only running 2 more injectors and 2 more coils on each power supply.
Yeah.
So it took the loading off. The fan output on this, it said the fan ran all the time. The fan ran all the time because it was connected to the ECU, but the ECU drives a fan computer. So it's not an on-off signal. It's a PWM. signal. So it won't drive a normal relay properly. So that didn't work.
Yeah, they didn't actually hook up the V8. A lot of it should have hooked up into the factory body of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Most of it was already there.
Yeah. So
maybe not everything, but most of it was already there.
yeah.
And that should have just been joined together by studying the diagrams or how each system worked.
I don't even know if he was using the right diagrams. He could have been working off the previous model GS430, but nothing actually worked like it should, and the wiring was terrible. So there is many hours in here checking, finding, redoing, undoing, changing. As I said, this is the sort of the... I could have got hours of footage of this because it was just everything you touched. It's all new connectors. So as per normal, when you're doing the connectors, some just fall apart. So that, like the insides of some of these just absolutely shatter.
Yes, because then you don't really pull them apart all that often. So if you don't touch them, they don't break.
Yeah, they just get corroded.
But then when you do touch them, they start breaking. So that's fairly common too.
So this has been rewired. I've put a big grommet on it. I've worked out how to put them on over the plugs now, and I've put a new body plug on, which is going to take place of the 2 body plugs that are in the vehicle, plus there's extra wires in here. So coil power, injector powers. I've run extra wires into the fuse box under the bonnet, into that one. So this plugs in the V6 computer's back to life. So that will, in the engine side, so that'll handle it, that'll plug in. There'll be a little sub loom to do these plugs up to those plugs.
You've got to feed a little bit of V8 into the V6 ECU.
Yeah, so you'll get the V6 ECU still needs to work to some extent, but the V8 ECU needs to do everything and most of the signals match. But the V6 ECU still needs to have enough that it will function to do what I need it to do. Yeah. The temp gauge.
Gauges and a couple of things.
And maybe air conditioning.
Yeah.
And then there's an additional box which I've fed a power feed in. So the V6 has an airflow relay which feeds power to the back oxygen sensors. So I've repurposed that, because it turns on anyway, to run my accessories. So that's the power feed I've used for that. So I don't have to add an extra power feed for it. None of that needs to be done.
So it sounds like there's more work to fix it than it is if you got just the factory loom and done it in the first place, in the first place.
Way more. But where do I go get a GS430 out of a UZS 190 GS?
But then how does this compare to building a new loom?
Yeah, it was pretty touch and go between a new loom and doing this way. It's still pretty intense building a new loom with the auto stuff. There's a lot down into the auto and into there. So
if it was a manual, you probably would have just done a...
I would have put an aftermarket computer on if it was manual, I think.
Yeah.
There's still other things I need to sort. So by doing it this way, I was able to go through and see what he'd done wrong and changed, and I found other issues. No matter what I'm doing, because I'm fighting with the fact that someone had absolutely no idea what they're doing. And you know what? This is worse than any DIY guy I've ever seen. Like, I have a higher expectation of an auto electrician, and he has not kept anywhere close to what I would expect from an auto electrician. Well, like even the quality of the workmanship.
I don't even do this on Chinese scooters. I do better than that on Chinese scooters. I wouldn't do that on a cheap, shitty motorbike scooter. Yeah. That's just not an appropriate way of doing something.
No.
You follow what the factory is. Okay,
yeah.
Chinese scooters
not even close,
this is not as nice as these, but I follow what it has. Yeah. So if it came out like that, you'd put it back that way.
Yeah. So that's what I've done. It's pretty much as Toyota's done it. Yeah. I've changed the alternator wiring, put the front plug in again, put the fan switch in.
How did you get on with the alternator being bigger amperage or not? Like
we ran new wires to it anyway.
Right, okay, yeah.
So...
And starter motor, well, that's...
I've got to look at the... so I can't easily upgrade the alternator fuse in this because it's an integrated fuse setup. It's not like all of them in it.
Oh, is it underneath and part of the, it's a power control module?
Kind of. It's kind of like
module.
it's a whole thing. So the next step, if that gives us any trouble, where I have to cut it out, externally mount the alternator.
Wiring, yeah.
No, the fuse for the alternator has to be externally mounted.
Yeah.
Though we've put a 3UZ alternator onto it, which is 130 amp. I did consider putting a 100 amp alternator on.
It's probably enough. Well, how much does the vehicle? What was the vehicle originally? What did the V6
I don't know
require?
what the V6 actually ran.
Yeah, probably 100. Yeah, it wouldn't be significant.
So
huge,
I did consider doing that. It just looks funny because there's one stud. I'd have to change one stud, which isn't a big deal. But I thought, hey, seeing it's a 3UZ, I'd put a 3UZ alternator on it. It's just a choice I made. At the end of the day, is it ever going to crank out 130 amps?
Only if your battery's flat.
Yeah.
It's about the only time you would be pulling 100% of its capacities when you got a flat battery.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be okay. I'm aware that that's a possible issue, such as life.
Well, then the external, the
Yep. So this now, I'll sort that airflow meter, and this is actually ready to fit. So it's my job for tomorrow. Try and squeeze it behind the manifold because the manifold's like this far away, and there's heater hoses and there's other stuff. And so I probably won't show that because there might be some bad language.
Yeah, and you can't show that on.
Not up to standards, community standards.
No, that's not.
And
that's not free speech.
at that point, I go inside the cabin and continue in there and find the other stuff. And then the shifter wiring, I'm just going to go colour for colour, cross my fingers at the moment, but I've still got to address things in the shifter. But this point is get it going again. And then once the vehicle runs
and turns off
and stops, what else doesn't actually work? What it does and doesn't function in that vehicle?
Yeah, because you can't
Because I'm
tell
fault finding what he's cut.
Yeah.
I know he's been under the diagnostic port. I know he's been by the shifter. I know he's been other places.
Yeah, you don't know what he's done. There's no way of working it out until you fix most things, and then
No, just look for the tape. Look for the tape.
Well, yeah, that's
But in the front fuse box, Jason looked in there initially and said, hey, he hasn't been in here. No one's been in there. But then I'm like, wait a minute, there's a cut wire. And the tape in there was actually quite neat. And he'd even taped back around the big bunch of wires.
Oh, so it made it look a lot.
So like this tape here was retaped and it actually looked like it was meant to. Yeah. Oh, here it is. So there's the fuse. That's the main fuse, the back.
Oh, okay.
So if you actually peel the lid off, it's a whole lot of little fuses in it.
And this is the alternator wire?
That's the alternator wire in there, yes.
Yeah, so it's input and it comes out of these ones, okay.
Yep, so it's a nice big wire.
Yeah.
Jason's rebuilt that, built a new one. And then there's all the fuses under there.
And they're not replaceable fuses or something?
That whole unit gets replaced.
Oh, I see.
That is the whole unit.
Oh, I see.
Just like this here is a relay.
Oh, okay.
So this one's got a start relay. The V6 has got 3 relays down here, so it's a little like a clip-in module.
Yeah.
I've added a fan relay here and an air conditioning trigger relay. And then this thing is a horn. That's your EFI relay. There's I'm thinking possibly there may be a circuit opening relay, like the fuel pump relay there, but I'm not actually 100% certain to be totally honest.
And that is one component.
And this is the horn relay is in here, and it's one component.
Yeah, and because the fuses you can't
And
touch
you can
it,
actually
don't
see the unplug. It's hard to see, but it unplugs here.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's all the control wires going into it. That's a diesel one, but it's the same concept.
Yeah, gotcha.
So there's a glow and a start, but on the V6 it's got 3. It's got the second fuel pump, because it's got a fuel pump resistor. It's got the AF relay, and it's got the start relay. They're all little fellas.
Yeah, well, you can recreate this component separately, or if you did pop it, the alternator fuse, because it might be lower, you could always come from here.
Yeah, I just bridge it out.
Yeah, and then recreate,
to the battery.
Yeah, recreate
and then
that.
back into the box. So it feeds the battery, which will be the biggest current draw.
Yeah.
And then back into there.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
Or it may not actually. Oh no, you could actually if you take it off there, just run it the battery, and then it runs the normal power supply, because they have a power supply that's been cut off. It's this one. So that's the normal power supply that goes up to the battery.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that goes the battery. So you just run this into an external and then onto the battery. It feeds back in here.
Not a huge issue if there's a concern.
Alright, that's my job.
Yeah. Lesson is, study your diagrams very closely and don't go cutting stuff. You really have to know what's going on between both components, both arms.
If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it.
Yeah, well, you very rapidly make a hell of a mess out of it.
And sit down. See, so what I do is I go through, I remove the V6 loom. I would check it with my diagrams, which I've got, but my diagrams were, so the diagrams carry the 4x4 and the 2-wheel drive.
Right.
And then what it's got is it's got these like those little asterisks to say that this pin is in this hole if it's a 2-wheel drive. This pin's in this hole if it's after 2003 or this month of 2003 and whatever. And so I get in and I actually just trace it all, because it doesn't take much time to trace the loom to find out where everything goes. And you go, that's why. I've got 2 wires, I don't know where it is. I've got no idea. Okay, no one at all. I've got wires run if I need to connect them up and work it out, but I don't think I'm going to need them. But anyway, so then I draw my own diagrams of that vehicle, or I just tick off what I've got and say, yes, that's where it all goes. And then I look at the V8 one and I go, well, here's my diagram of the V8. I need a fuel pump trigger. So fuel pump trigger connects to the fuel pump trigger. The second fuel pump trigger connects to the fuel pump trigger. The main relay connects to the main relay. There's a power supply for all the solenoids on the engine. There's a power supply for the injectors, so I'll use the same one. There's a power supply for the coils. I'll use the same one. They're all in there. There's a start circuit, which this one, extra solenoid, extra switch on the shifter, it's in the main shift plug on the vehicle. So starts in here. It's the big two. So you connect into those. And then this one had a computer controlled alternator. The Ute didn't.
But you can do that too. You can put the alternator. You had a video recently of showing you the alternators. You remove the computer controlled alternator, put on a more.
So that's what I did.
And then you can change the connector at the end to suit if you require. It's a round pin and
just
oval
easier.
pin or something, whatever. Just remove that complexity out of it.
Just so much easier just to put the normal one into it.
Days, you can potentially get the whole lot non-computer the same capacity as a computerized one.
Yep. So that makes it simple to match the vehicle. So it means this one got a different air conditioning pump, a different alternator. So those were both changed. They didn't have a power steer pump originally. Some 3UZs don't. So it's actually got a 1UZ VVTi power steer pump on it.
Yeah, which is probably fine. Yeah.
So as long as you mount that correctly, you're all good there. So that all works. So then the wiring pretty much becomes, well, normally I'd use the factory body plugs, and you pretty much plug it in.
Well, the first thing you do is plug in or plug together. What you know is exactly the same. That's the first thing. And then you end up with a bunch of wires that are different. Okay, then you start working that out. Put together what you know is exactly the same thing to start with. That eliminates a whole bunch of wires.
Correct.
And then it leaves you a bunch of wires that you're not sure, and then you have to start planning it.
Yep. So, pretty much now, that's what I've got. That's what I've created. So what I will now do is, as I cut each wire in the vehicle to cut the factory body plug off, I'll go, it's in this pin. And so the factory injector power is still in the same plug because it wasn't used. The injector, the coil, then the other one, the coil or injector one that isn't used, I'll just put that and it goes into my plug. Then, he connected in oil pressure, which was tapped through the ECU as well. So it doesn't need that. So I can put that wire into my new plug, into my plug, works. The alternator light into my plug, all those things can be put in. and then I get to that ECU wiring, it's just like I'll go colour for colour and cross my fingers a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'll go, that one should be that one.
Can you blow something up if
yeah. The problem is Toyota changes colours between years.
Yeah, well, that's right.
So I'll look at colour for colour, and then I'll go, it goes into that pin, and then that makes sense of what it is.
Yeah, we have the pin out is always. No, the pin out can potentially the same, even though the colour can change.
Yeah. So the pin out will be the same.
Work out your pin out function, ignore the colour.
Yep.
Ignore the colour.
I've got some really good pin outs for a V6, luckily. So colour's a little bit marginal, but I've got a couple. So I'm close enough for there, and but they've all been soldered and joined. So I'm going to cut every single one of them out. Basically, I'm going to recrimp the V6 ECU plugs.
Back on again.
So whatever he's cut out of them, if it needs it, I'm going to start again. The ones that are in there, I will put back in. So I've got to pop them out. I'll probably cut them actually, because they're going to be a little bit shorter, and put them all back in. And then I'll do the same thing with the ones that are cut, the whole lot. And I'll just spend however many hours under the dash putting it back together. Because I couldn't get a V6 wiring loom easily that I know matches that truck exactly. Because V6s aren't very common here anyway.
No, that's true. They're mostly diesel.
Most of them are diesel.
Okay, was that diesel?
Yep.
Yeah, that was diesel.
So, can't get them, so I'm buggered. I just got to fix it. I don't have a choice. And then come over to the driver's side, whatever he's played with there, fix that, down to the shifter, fix anything that works there. But I should, if the wires run across, I'll trace them, look at them, change it as required. Once it runs, I'll then fault find.
Yeah, see what your next problems are.
Yep.
See what it takes.
Right, I'm going to go home. I think I've had enough here for the moment. It's dark. It's another good mission on this one. I've got that last plug put on. I've got it kind of looking like a wiring loom. And next is to put it in.
But wouldn't it be better to put because it's running a factory V8 ECU, wouldn't it be better just to leave it in the same location more or less in the vehicle? Or not?
No, so the battery in the V8, the battery, it would end up where the battery is.
Oh, okay. So you'd always have to go from under the bonnet to inside on the conversion.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So there's a fuse box and a battery in that location.
Oh, okay.
So I've got more of these, and I'm going to be doing it the same way, where I cut it, split it, and put it in the cabin.
Yeah.
I've already done some like this, but I've always done virgin looms that haven't been played with.
Yeah.
So virgin looms are much faster. Like you can do them a heap quicker than playing this game.
There's no mistakes inside it.
Because I can just look at it and go, there's the body plug. Body plug's got these wires in it. Cool. I need to run in a temp wire. I need to run fan wires. Easy. Put them in. Job done. Run them. Build the loom. Change it. I could just about make now that third plug and that side of the loom as a ready to go to fit into the stock loom. Like I could pretty much and it would just sort of slip together. So, and you're not finding halfway through there's a cut yellow wire halfway down the main trunk, and you're like, what is this wire? Yeah. And it's like, well, I probably should try and trace it. So, decision was made to fix this one. I fixed it. I'm pretty happy with it actually. I still think it's probably faster than building a new loom. Because building a new loom, there's still potential to get things wrong. Right. Anyway, it is home time. Had enough. Put a knot.